In 2008, just 11% of the population had ever listened to a podcast. In 2019, this figure has skyrocketed to over 50% of the population. The medium of podcasts is quickly growing, and our options are more overwhelming than ever. So here's a short list that can hopefully guide you through this vast landscape of digital audio. Here's a look at the top 10 podcasts of 2019. Coming in at number 10 is The Shrink Next Door. This podcast is a story of psychological manipulation by a psychotherapist called Ike. The story delves into many more topics like power, control, friendship, and desire for wealth and happiness. The Shrink Next Door is from Wondery, the makers of Dirty John and Dr. Death. So if you like those, this is worth checking out. This 6-episode podcast was rated number 1 on Apple charts for almost a month straight. And for good reason. It offers a unique perspective on how we can be influenced and exploited against our will by those savvy enough to do so. At number 9, we have Monster, the Zodiac Killer. If the Joker from the Batman series existed in real life, this might be his story.
This is the Zodiac speaking. If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday, 1st of August, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again. The best part of it is that when I die, I'll be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed will become my slaves.
Monster, the Zodiac Killer, takes listeners on a twisted journey of an unsolved mystery of a serial killer that haunted Northern California in the late 60s. The man behind these crimes, who goes by the pseudonym of Zodiac, claimed 37 victims and sent numerous letters containing cryptograms to toy with the police. What really makes this podcast is the story, which is haunted in many ways, but equally as captivating. There's a seamless blend between first-hand accounts, reenactments, narrations. It all comes together to create a really immersive experience. In the number 8 spot, we have The Dropout. This captivating 6-episode podcast chronicles the dramatic rise and fall of ex-Silicon Valley medtech entrepreneur Elizabeth Holmes. In 2015, Holmes was the youngest and wealthiest female self-made billionaire with an estimated net worth of over $4 billion because of a stake in her blood testing startup, Theranos. Holmes dropped out of Stanford University to start her company at the young age of 19. However, the company, which aimed to revolutionize medicine with a single drop blood test, sold a false promise and was plagued by corrupt management and a culture of secrecy and intimidation. The Dropout takes you through the unraveling of Theranos and serves as a warning of the dangers of pursuing wealth and glory at all costs. At number 7, we have Over My Dead Body, a true crime podcast about marriage, divorce, family, and murder. The focus here is on Daniel Markle and Wendy Endelson, two formerly married attorneys, both of who are extremely intelligent with big personalities. But their relationship went off the rails.
The mysterious killing of a prominent law professor,
murdered execution style,
shot and killed inside his home.
What makes this story especially odd are the characters involved and the nature of the crimes that took place. These are attorneys turned college professors who on the surface have their lives together, but end up getting involved with hitmen and gang members. This is one of those juicy, suspense-filled stories that'll keep you guessing. Number 6, Mobituaries. This is a weird one, in a good way. In Mobituaries, the host, Moraka, tells the stories of unique people, some of who have passed away, in a manner that's both humorous and deceptively well-researched. It's lighthearted and easy to listen to. At its core, this is a podcast about the lives of people, whose stories you probably won't have otherwise come across. Mo is charming and very likable, and the topics of conversation are very interesting and unique. At the number 5 spot, we have Cold. This is a thorough and captivating report of the murder of Susan Powell by her husband, Josh Powell, who also murdered himself along with his 2 sons. It's a tragic story of domestic abuse of a good woman and a horrible relationship. Cole takes you into the minds of the detectives behind the case and gives you an in-depth look at the lives of those involved through numerous first-hand recordings, personal journals, and police reports. The victim's body in this case was never found, which makes her story even more heart-wrenching. There's a lot of backstory here, which can be even too much at times, but it's well organized and well delivered. Number 4, The Daily. If you're looking to know what's going on in the world, look no further than The Daily. This is a 20-minute podcast that presents the biggest stories and news events of our time by some of the best journalists in the globe. In today's society, not only is it difficult to keep up with the plethora of information being presented to us, but it's hard to discern what's really important from sensationalized clickbait. In The Daily, each episode explores a single topic that is both interesting and worth learning about. The Daily transcends the news. Not only is this podcast very informative, but it has a unique style that makes it a pleasure to listen to.
This moment deserves compassion and an honest conversation. But most of all, this moment deserves to be understood. I'm Michael Barbaro, journalist and host of The Daily, a podcast from the New York Times.
Number 3, Julie, the Unwinding of the Miracle. This one is quite heavy, but my personal favorite on the list because of how impactful it is. Julie, the Unwinding of the Miracle, chronicles the last days of Julie Yip Williams, an exceptional woman who managed to defy all odds. Julie died at the relatively young age of 42 after a fierce battle with colon cancer, but she documents this process as she faces her imminent death.
There's so much that you cannot control in life. Being born blind, couldn't control that. Getting cancer at 37, couldn't control that either. But if there's one thing I've learned is that you can control how you respond to these things.
Death is a topic we hate to think about, but it's a certainty that we will all eventually face. Julie's perspective is one of honesty, and she speaks with care and confidence. This isn't just a podcast, it's more than that, and it's hard not to fall in love with Julie. Number 2, Culpable, yet another true crime podcast. This year has been dominated by podcasts of this genre. Culpable is an investigative podcast about misjustice and the search for truth. It explores the mysterious death of 21-year-old Christian Andreacchio. Season 1, Episode 1 sets the tone from the jump. It's imbued with a southern, small-town Mississippi feel that mentally puts you in the environment that the events of the podcast take place in. The very deliberate pacing of the show, along with the solid sound design and music choices, makes for an emotionally compelling story. And the top podcast of 2019 goes to Man in the Window. This may be one of the most twisted mysteries you will ever hear, that took over 40 years to solve. It's about a vicious, inhumane serial killer and rapist that haunted Northern California for years. He broke into over 100 homes, raped over 50 women, and murdered 13 people. He was known as the Golden State Killer, who happens to be a former police officer. Crazy story. Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter Paige St. John does an excellent job writing, producing, and narrating this podcast. Man in the Window gets very intense and engaging as you progress through the episode, especially as they begin to solve the case. Although violent, gruesome, and difficult to listen to at times, it's a captivating podcast. There are bad people, there are horrible people, and then there's the Man in the Window. So that's my top 10 list of the top podcasts of 2019. Now obviously, this is a subjective selection, but I hope you discover at least a few podcasts that you previously were unaware of.